It was a cold, quiet evening, the kind of evening when people hurry indoors to stay warm and enjoy dinner with their families. The restaurant Royal Fork was shining brightly on the corner street. Its glass windows sparkled. Waiters moved quickly. Gentle music played in the background. It was a place for the rich, the kind who wore expensive suits, shiny watches, and perfume that cost more than a maid's salary. Inside the restaurant, people were laughing, talking, and sipping from fine glasses. No one expected anything unusual to happen that night. But then, the door opened. A cold wind followed the figure that stepped in. It was an old black woman. Her skin was wrinkled, her clothes were simple, clean, but clearly very old. Her coat had loose buttons, and her shoes were worn from years of walking. She looked around quietly, holding a small black handbag tightly in her hands. She didn't look rich, she didn't look important. She just looked tired. The people inside stared. Some paused mid-bite, others whispered softly, and behind the counter, Kevin, a young waiter in a tight vest and polished shoes, saw her. He raised an eyebrow. She must be lost, he muttered, but she wasn't lost. She slowly walked forward and stood at the reception. I would like a table, please, she said, softly, her voice kind and calm. Kevin looked her up and down, from her hair to her shoes. Then he laughed, not kindly, but mockingly. A table, he repeated. Here, the old woman nodded. Double quotes, yes, I'd like to have dinner here. Kevin chuckled louder now. A few customers nearby began to listen. Ma'am, he said sarcastically, do you know how much our cheapest dish costs? The woman nodded again. Yes, I have money. She opened her old bag and took out a small leather wallet. Inside were a few bills folded neatly. Kevin's face twisted. He didn't even look at the money. Ma'am, he said, this is a premium restaurant. You might be more comfortable at the diner down the road. They serve, You're kind. His words were sharp. Everyone nearby heard. A couple at the next table exchanged glances. A man with a child looked away, uncomfortable, but no one said anything. The woman's hands trembled slightly. Still, she stayed calm. I'm not asking for charity, she said, softly. Just a table, please. Kevin leaned in close and whispered cruelly, look, don't make a scene. You're embarrassing yourself. Leave before someone calls security. The old woman's eyes blinked slowly. She nodded, took a deep breath, and turned around. Her feet moved slowly toward the exit, but just as her hand touched the glass door, the door opened from the outside hard. A man walked in, tall, powerful, dressed in a perfect black suit. His shoes shined like mirrors. His watch sparkled under the lights. His face was strong, serious, like a man used to being in control. His name was Malik Johnson, one of the richest businessmen in the city. The restaurant manager rushed toward him, smiling fake smiles. Mr. Johnson. Welcome, sir. Your usual table. But Malik wasn't looking at the manager. He was looking at the old woman. His face changed in an instant. Mom, he whispered. He rushed toward her, held her arms gently. Everyone stared in shock. Kevin stepped back. The woman looked up at her son. Malik, what are you doing here alone? He asked. You should have called me. I didn't want to bother you, she said softly. I just wanted to try the food here. I heard it was good. Malik turned and looked around. Who was at the front? He asked. Kevin was frozen. Malik looked at him, his eyes sharp, cold. You? Did you serve my mother? Kevin's lips trembled. I didn't know who she was, sir. Malik's voice rose slightly, calm but dangerous. So, if she wasn't my mother, it was okay to insult her. The restaurant had fallen silent now. No one was eating, no one was speaking. Every eye was on them. Kevin tried to explain. She didn't look like she belonged here. I thought she was poor, Malik said. You thought she wasn't good enough to eat here? Kevin looked down. The old lady touched her son's arm. Let it go. I'm used to it, she said. Malik looked at her, heartbreaking. You shouldn't be. He turned to the manager. Get her the best table, right now, and make sure everyone here knows. This woman is not just my mother. She is the reason I am who I am. A soft gasp moved through the restaurant. Whispers started. His mother? I thought she was just a poor old lady. The manager nodded nervously and guided them to a VIP table. Kevin stood still, shaking. The old woman sat quietly, still calm. Malik sat beside her and held her hand. Then he looked around the restaurant at the people who had laughed, who had looked away, who had judged. She may look old, he said loudly, but she's stronger than anyone here. He looked at Kevin. She didn't come here for free food. She came with dignity. More than you showed her. The restaurant was silent. Nobody touched their food. Nobody spoke. All eyes were on Malik Johnson, the man in the black suit. A man whose name alone made headlines. A man who just called that poor, quiet old woman. His mother. Kevin, the waiter who humiliated her, stood frozen near the counter. His face was pale. His hands were shaken. The same people who laughed with him earlier were now avoiding his eyes, because now they knew the truth. The poor old woman wasn't just anyone. She was the mother of the man who owned half the city. The manager rushed to the VIP section, fixing the table himself. Ma'am, sir, please. Sit here, he said, nervously pulling out a chair. Malik helped his mother sit. Then he sat beside her, never letting go of her hand. She looked around, embarrassed. I didn't want this, she whispered. I know, he replied, but some lessons must be taught publicly. Across the room, Kevin was sweating. He turned to another waiter. What do I do? The waiter looked away. Apologize, he whispered, before it's too late. Kevin slowly walked toward their table. Each step felt heavier than the last. He stopped in front of Malik and his mother. He cleared his throat. SR, ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Malik raised his hand. Don't speak, he said quietly. Just listen. Kevin closed his mouth. Malik stood up and addressed the entire restaurant. His voice was calm, but carried power. Everyone in this room saw what happened a few minutes ago, he began. You saw how my mother was treated because of how she looked, because of what she wore, because she didn't fit in. He looked at the tables around him, at the faces that were now red with shame. You judged her, just like he did, Malik said, pointing at Kevin. The waiter lowered his head. Malik continued. My mother worked for 40 years as a housemaid. She scrubbed floors, washed clothes, cleaned toilets, all while raising me. Alone, people began to murmur softly. She saved every rupee, ate less so I could eat more, wore the same dress so I could wear school uniforms. He turned and looked at his mother, her eyes now filled with tears. She gave me everything, and asked for nothing. Someone in the corner wiped their eyes. Another man whispered to his wife, I feel so ashamed right now. Malik turned back to Kevin. When you saw her, what did you see? Kevin answered, almost crying. I saw an old poor woman. Malik nodded, and that was your mistake. He looked around again. That's everyone's mistake. The old woman finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but strong. I don't want anyone punished, she said. I didn't come here for drama. I just wanted to try the food. She smiled slightly. I heard this restaurant had the best soup in town. A few people laughed nervously, wiping tears. Malik looked at her with love. You'll get more than soup, Mama. Tonight you eat like a queen. Kevin looked at her and whispered, Ma'am, I'm truly sorry. She looked at him and simply said, I forgive you. But next time, look at people's eyes, not their clothes. The manager stepped forward. Sir, he said to Malik, please allow us to cover your entire meal. It's the least we can do. But Malik raised his hand again. No. He turned to the crowd and said, this isn't about free food. This is about respect. He looked back at Kevin and said, maybe you need to know where she came from to understand her worth. Then he sat down beside his mother again. She gently placed her hand over his dot. The waiter stood silently, ashamed. The lights in the restaurant still glowed softly, but the mood had changed completely. The air now felt heavy, filled with emotions and thoughts no one had expected to feel during dinner. People had come for fine food instead. They were witnessing something powerful, something real. Malik held his mother's hand gently. Then he looked at Kevin, the waiter, and spoke with calm anger. You judged her for how she looks today. Let me tell you who she really is. And so began the story. Not the story of a rich man, but the story of a poor mother. Her name was Evelyn. Born in a small village in the 1960s, the youngest daughter of a family that had very little except dignity, she married young. Her husband worked in a factory. Life was tough, but they had love. Then one rainy night, when Malik was just 3 years old, her husband never came home. A factory fire. No survivors. Evelyn became a widow overnight. No money, no support, just a small child in a world that didn't care. She could have given up, but she did in single quotes too. She moved to the city with no degree, no skills. The only work she found was cleaning homes. So she cleaned. She mopped floors in the morning, washed dishes in the afternoon, scrubbed bathrooms at night. And after every shift, she came home to Malik and smiled. She told him bedtime stories, fed him whatever she could afford. Even when she stayed hungry, every single dollar she made, she saved it not for clothes, not for herself, for his school books, for his bus fare, for his dreams. People looked down on her, Malik said to the silent restaurant crowd. They called her names, treated her like she was invisible. He looked at Kevin again. Just like you did today. Kevin nodded, eyes full of regret. Malik continued. When I was in high school, she worked 2 jobs. When I got a scholarship, she cried all night, because finally, something was going our way. Evelyn sat silently, her eyes wet now. Even then, Malik said, she never asked for anything. She could have quit when she got sick once. She could have quit when she fainted from exhaustion, but she never quit. She said to me once, if I can keep your path clean, you will walk like a king one day. The restaurant was now completely quiet. Forks had stopped moving. People forgot their food. They were seeing something rare. Truth, and today. Malik said, voice full of love. I wear this suit because she wore the same dress for 10 years. I drive a BMW because she walked to work every day in broken sandals, so I wouldn't feel poor at school. He looked at his mother and said, Mom, you never sat in a fancy place like this. But from today, every room you walk into will become royal. Evelyn smiled quietly. She didn't want attention. She only wanted to be treated like a human being. Just then, a woman from the other table stood up. She walked over and gently placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. You remind me of my mother. One by one, Others began to walk toward her, a businessman, a college student, a mother with 2 kids. They didn't say much, just nodded, or placed a gentle hand, or smiled. Kevin stayed back. He looked like he was carrying a mountain of guilt. And in that moment, Evelyn, the old lady who had walked in alone, was no longer just a customer. She was a symbol, a mother, a warrior, a queen in simple clothes. The restaurant was still glowing. Soft lights above, soft music in the background, but inside something had changed. The people weren't just eating anymore. They were watching, listening, feeling, all because of one woman, Evelyn, the old lady who walked in alone. The woman no one noticed, until they knew the truth. She had become more than a mother now. She was the story that no one could ignore. Malik sat beside her, still holding her hand. He had just told everyone how she raised him alone, how she cleaned homes to send him to school, how she gave everything and asked for nothing. But what people didn't know yet was how much pain she had truly carried. Malik turned to his mother and whispered, "Mama, maybe they should know." She shook her head gently. "No need. It's in the past." But Malik said softly, "The past matters. Your pain made me who I am." She looked down at her hands, wrinkled, tired, yet strong. Then she nodded. "All right," she said, "but only because I want them to understand." And so she began to speak. Her voice was soft, but each word carried weight. "I was 24 when I lost my husband," she said. "We had just enough money for rent and milk. I remember the day. I got the phone call. I was making rice. The pot boiled over. I never finished that meal." Everyone listened quietly. Even the kitchen staff had come out. "The hardest part," she said, "was not the hunger, not the cold nights. It was the way people looked at me, like I was worthless." She paused. "I once cleaned a mansion. Every day. The woman of the house never looked me in the eyes, not even once. She called me maid, never my name." Someone in the restaurant lowered their head. "I cleaned her floors, her windows, even her children's vomit," Evelyn said. "And when I asked for my payment one month, she said, 'Be grateful I let you in my house.'" She smiled slightly. "I was grateful, but I was also human." Malik was watching his mother with deep emotion in his eyes. So were many others. Some people had tears running down their faces. "Now I remember," Evelyn said. "Once I had no money to buy Malik shoes, so I cut old sandals and made straps, using thread and glue. I was scared he'd get laughed at in school." Malik spoke up. "But I told my friends they were custom made from a foreign country," he said with a chuckle. People laughed softly, a warm, emotional laugh. Then, Evelyn said something that touched every heart in the room. "I never hated anyone, even those who treated me badly, because I believed one day, someone would see my son and know my worth." She looked around now, not afraid, and now, here you are. A young man from the back table stood up and clapped softly. Then a woman joined in. Soon the entire restaurant was clapping, not out of pity, out of respect. Kevin, the waiter who had insulted her, stood silently by the wall. His eyes were wet. His face showed deep regret. Evelyn looked at him. "I forgive you," she said, "but don't forget me, because one day, you'll meet someone else like me, and that day, I hope you treat them better." Kevin stepped forward slowly. He knelt down beside her and said quietly, "You didn't just change my day. You changed my life." Malik smiled and nodded. And for the first time that evening, Evelyn laughed out a warm, beautiful laugh, that kind that only comes from a heart that has been through storms and still chooses kindness. The night was no longer just about food. It had become a night of truth, forgiveness, and change. The old black woman Evelyn, who once sat alone, was now surrounded by respect. But there was one person in the room who still felt broken. Kevin, the waiter. The man who had insulted her, laughed at her clothes, treated her like she didn't belong. Even after hearing her story, even after her forgiving him, he couldn't forgive himself. After the restaurant quieted again, Kevin slowly walked to the manager. "Can I talk to her?" he asked. The manager looked surprised, then nodded. Kevin turned toward Evelyn. This time, no pride, no fake smile, only honesty. He stood beside her table and said, "Ma'am, I didn't just insult you earlier. I insulted every person who ever struggled, who ever looked different, who ever walked into a room and felt small." Evelyn looked at him kindly, waiting. Kevin continued, "My mom used to clean houses too. I was ashamed of it when I was younger. I never told anyone." He paused. "But today, watching you, hearing your story, I felt ashamed of myself, not her." Malik looked at him quietly, as if waiting to see what he'd say next. Kevin looked Evelyn in the eyes. "I've been working here for 4 years, but I think tonight, I really started to learn. I want to do better. I want to be better." He looked at Malik now. "If there's any way I could make this right, I'm ready." The restaurant was silent again. Evelyn gave him a small smile. "You've already taken the first step, son," she said gently. "Most people don't say sorry. You did." Malik stood up. He looked at Kevin seriously, then said, "Come to my office tomorrow morning." Kevin blinked. "Surprised, sir." Malik smiled. "You'll understand when you get there." People whispered around the restaurant. What was he planning? Was it a test? A punishment? The rest of the evening was calm. The staff served Evelyn her favorite meal. The manager checked on her every few minutes. Customers came to take photos with her respectfully. Malik sat beside her the entire time, proud, and Kevin. He stayed quiet, but he watched. He learned. He opened the door for other guests. He picked up a child's toy from the floor. He helped an elderly man find his seat, and every time he looked at Evelyn, he saw not just a customer, but a teacher. That night, as Evelyn left the restaurant, Kevin walked her to the car. He opened the door and said, "I hope I get to meet more people like you." She turned and smiled. "Just treat every person like you already have." The car drove away into the night. But the lessons of that evening stayed behind in Kevin's heart. The next morning, Kevin didn't sleep well. He kept hearing Evelyn's words. He kept replaying his own mistakes, and he kept wondering what Malik, the CEO, meant when he said, "Come to my office tomorrow morning." Was he going to get fired? Was it a warning? Or was it something more? Kevin didn't know, but he dressed carefully that morning. Clean shirt, pressed trousers. No smile, just nervous silence. He arrived at the tall office building, one of the biggest in the city. He had never been inside before. The security guard looked at him and asked, "You sure you're in the right place?" Kevin nodded. "Yes, Mr. Malik asked me to come." The guard checked the list and let him in. As he entered the shiny elevator, Kevin's heart beat faster. Floor after floor passed. Finally, he reached the top. A glass door read, "CEO, Mr. Malik Johnson." He knocked. The door opened, and there he was. Malik, the same man who sat beside the old lady last night. But today, he looked different. No emotion, no smile, just a serious expression. "Come in," Malik said. Kevin entered quietly. He didn't sit until Malik pointed to the chair. A long pause followed. Then Malik finally spoke. "You were a different man last night, Kevin." Kevin nodded. "I know." Malik leaned forward. "And you admitted your mistake. Not everyone does that." Kevin looked down. "I was wrong, sir. About her. About everything," Malik continued. "You didn't know who she was. That's understandable. But what you did shows how you treat people when no one is watching." Kevin swallowed hard. "I don't want to be that person anymore," he said softly. Malik looked at him for a moment, then stood up. He walked to the window, looked out at the city, then said, "Good, because I'm offering you something." Kevin looked up, confused. Malik turned and faced him. "I run a training program for people who want to become more than what they are, not just workers but leaders." Kevin's eyes widened. "Me, a leader?" Malik nodded. "But it's not easy. It's not about money. It's about mindset. It's about service. About understanding people." He paused, "And it starts with this question. Can you serve others with respect? Even when they don't look like you, speak like you, or dress like you?" Kevin nodded slowly. "I want to learn." Malik smiled, finally. "Then your test begins now." He handed Kevin a folder. Inside it, instructions for a 30-day shadow program serving under different departments in Malik's company. "Think of this as your second chance." Malik said. Kevin stood up, grateful, and said, "Thank you, sir. I won't waste it." Malik nodded. "But remember," he added, "you're not doing this for me. You're doing it for the next Evelyn who walks into your life." As Kevin left the office, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Kevin's life was changing. Every morning, he woke up early, put on a clean shirt, reached the company before time. No more serving food. Now, he was learning how to serve people with his heart. He worked in different departments, cleaning staff one day, reception the next, delivery office the next. He listened more. He judged less. He started to understand something Malik had told him. Respect isn't about position. It's about how you treat the person with none. One day, Kevin was helping the janitor clean the hallway. He noticed a young boy, maybe 19, mopping the floor quietly. Quickly, Kevin smiled and said, "You do good work." The boy looked shocked. "Nobody ever tells me that," he said. Kevin asked, "What's your name?" "Jaden," the boy replied softly. Kevin looked at him closely, tired eyes, old shoes, but full of dignity. He remembered Evelyn. "You remind me of someone," Kevin said. Jaden laughed. "A janitor." Kevin smiled. "A queen." Jaden looked confused. So Kevin shared her story, how she was insulted, how she stayed strong, and how she raised a CEO. Jaden listened like it was a movie. At the end, he asked quietly, "Do you think someone like me can become something more too?" Kevin looked him in the eyes. "You already are. You just need to believe it before the world does." That evening, Kevin sent an email to Malik's subject, "A janitor worth investing in." "Sir, I met someone today. He reminded me of myself, before you gave me a second chance. Can we do the same for him?" Malik replied in just one line, "Bring him in." The next morning, Kevin told Jaden about the opportunity. Jaden's eyes filled with tears. "I've never had someone speak up for me before," he said. Kevin smiled. "Now you do, and one day you'll do it for someone else." A week later, Jaden started his training. He worked hard. He showed up early. He made notes. He asked questions. Malik watched from a distance and smiled. The cycle was continuing. Kindness had been passed on. Evelyn's story didn't just change her son, it was now changing lives she had never even met. One afternoon, Kevin visited Evelyn. He knocked on her small apartment door. She opened it and smiled wide. "You again?" she said. He handed her flowers. "Thank you." he said softly, "for teaching me how to see." She touched his shoulder gently. "No, son, thank you for learning." Weeks passed, Kevin kept growing, Jaden kept learning, and Malik, he kept watching quietly and planning something special, because there was still one person who deserved more than just a thank you. One person who had carried pain, walked through storms, and still wore kindness like a crown. Evelyn. Malik sat in his office with his team one morning and said, "I want to honor someone, not because she's rich, not because she's famous, but because she raised a man who became both." That week, plans began. A special day was chosen. A hall was decorated. People were invited. But Evelyn, she knew nothing. She thought Malik was just taking her to dinner, so she wore her best dress, the same one she wore to church on Sundays. Malik picked her up personally. "You look beautiful, Mama," he said. She smiled. "You always say that when you want something," he laughed. "Maybe I do." When they arrived at the venue, Evelyn was confused. Bright lights, cameras, dozens of people. "Where are we?" she asked. Malik held her hand gently. "Somewhere you belong." As they walked in, the crowd stood and clapped. People from the restaurant were there. Jaden was there. Kevin stood at the front, waiting, all smiling, all clapping for her. Evelyn looked around, overwhelmed. "Is this for me?" she whispered, while Malik smiled. "It's time the world knew who the real queen is." He walked her to the stage, gave her the mic. She shook her head, nervous. "I don't speak at big events," she whispered. Malik leaned down and said, "You spoke in silence all your life, Mama. Now let the world hear your voice." She looked out at the crowd. Then she began, softly, "I never thought my pain would bring me to a room like this, but maybe that's the lesson, that no tear is wasted, no hard day forgotten, and no small woman is truly small when she gives her love away." People wiped their eyes. Even the waiters from that first night were there, listening. Evelyn looked down at Malik, then at Kevin, then at Jaden. Then she said something no one would forget. "If my story changed you, then promise me this changed someone else's story too." The crowd stood again. Applause thundered through the room. Not for money, not for fame, but for kindness, for courage, for a mother's love. Malik took the stage once more. He hugged his mother tightly. Then announced, "From this day on, we will launch the Evelyn Foundation, a program to help single mothers, young workers, and janitors build a better life." People cheered. Evelyn cried, and the moment was sealed. The janitor who was laughed at, the waiter who had fallen, the mother who was overlooked, all stood tall now, because sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest power.